Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Shenanigans stretch bracelet. These are two versions. I just want to show you that the tutorial that we have is always going to be in the pink and gunmetal. It was just a nice strong contrast so that you can see the photos the best, but you can work in any colors that you would like to with this. In the video, I'm going to use the white and the silver to show you how to make this. And you can do it in any colors, and it ends up being just beautiful. And I'll just show you here how this stretches. Okay, so we've made this weave in such a way that doesn't require a clasp, and it's going to stretch to fit over your hand and fit on your wrist. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so to start this weave, you'll notice that I already pre-opened my jump rings, and these are 18 gauge 5/32 square wire jump rings. Okay, and you can see that the square wire has a hard edge to it, and that makes this extra shiny. So our first step is going to be just to make a 1x1 chain. So I have my first open jump ring, I have 2 rubber O-rings, and I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, just to talk again about opening and closing jump rings, when you go to close your jump rings, again, I'm moving not just in this back and forth motion, but I'm also moving in this motion too. But I also today want to talk to you a little bit about the tension that you're putting when you do this. So as I close this, I actually, at the same time I'm moving this way, I'm actually kind of pushing with my thumb a little bit to give this wire just the slightest twist back to get it back on the straight. Okay, and you can see that that's now closed. So what happens when they make jump rings is that they're wrapped around a coil. So they wrap them, and that creates just a slight angle on the jump ring that when you go to close it makes it not quite straight. So when you're, particularly when you're using square jump rings, you need to think about the fact that, you know, it's not just about bringing that back and forth, but we're also trying to get this tip of the jump ring just slightly turned back to a straight direction. And the same with this one, although this one tends to happen a little bit more naturally, and the one you have a little bit more impact on is the one in your right hand side. Okay, so that's getting highly technical and into very tiny micro movements. It's not something I've mentioned before, even in my open and closing jump rings, but just, you know, put it in your mind. Okay, so you see we're just making a 1x1 chain here. Okay, so very quickly do another one. Okay, and this is step 1. So I want you to look at the size chart that goes with this, and you're going to choose the number of rows that you need. In my case, I'm pretty average, so I'm going to end up doing 25 in this row. And I've actually been working on, just to see if you do this in pieces, I've actually been working on another piece over here, which I can add on to this. Okay. And we just want to make this row 25 rows long. Okay, and get it to be just like this. Okay, so that's step 1. I'm going to finish this part up, and I'll be back in just a second to show you step 2. Okay, so my chain is completed. Okay, you can see this is just a 1x1 chain. There's nothing fancy about it, plain and simple. Now the next step, I think a lot of people probably want to overthink this step, and it's actually very simple. So the next step is just that we want to put rubber O-rings over top of every position where there's a metal jump ring. Okay, so I'm going to go about halfway in. That's not quite halfway. About halfway in. Okay, so that, and I'll work from either end in order to make this a little bit faster and easier on myself, and so I don't pull my rubber O-rings in the center chain out of place. Okay, so see how I'm just pulling these down. So I have one laying over top of this jump ring, one over this jump ring, one over this jump ring. Okay, and I'm gonna do this throughout the entire chain. As I said, I'm gonna work from this side, and then when I get these filled up, I'm gonna turn it around and I'm gonna work from the other side. Okay, and then, you know, I'm gonna get closer to the end with each step because you see these are just hanging on here. Okay, so that's step 2. I'm gonna pause the video. If you wanna catch up, pause here, and I'll be back in just a moment to move to the next step. Okay, so I've completed this last step, and I just want you to see how there's just an O-ring sitting over top of each of the jump rings that was here, okay? So now moving to step 3. Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated, and you might have to sit and look at this for a while. But once you get the hang of this, this is very, very simple. It just is a matter of understanding it from the start. Okay, so see how these were straight on, and you can see that my jump ring under here is on the horizontal. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to fold this second jump ring of the chain, or sorry, O-ring of the chain back, okay, so that it makes this jump ring that sits underneath it sit on the vertical. Okay, and we're going to ignore this one right here. Okay, so just ignore the ones that we just put on. We don't want to pay any attention to them at all. Okay, so I'm going to show you that one more time. See how I have it stretched out, and I'm just going to fold this up like that, and you can see that my jump ring is now facing the other direction. Now I'm going to have to do that a second time in order to get this chain started. So now I'm on this ring here. You can see that the jump ring is running on the horizontal right now. Okay, and I'm just going to fold this up. I'm ignoring that O-ring on the bottom. I'm going to fold this up again. Okay, and now I have 2 rows where you can see that the 2 jump rings are sitting on the vertical. Now, what we're looking for here is right in here. These 2 rings. This one sits back behind this ring here, and this one sits in front of it. What we want to do is take an open jump ring, and we're going to wrap it around these 2 rings here, okay? But we're going to stay inside of this one. We're not touching this one that's on the top. We're trying to link these 2 rings together here, okay? So I'm going to pick up a jump ring, and by the way, this is the hardest step of the whole thing. Just getting this first one on. Once you get this one established, everything becomes easier. So see how I'm diving down in to the one that's on top, and then I'm allowing my jump ring to go all the way back through this one that sits behind it. And I'm gonna push this one on top up over. See how I did that? I pushed this up around it so this could come through and back out to the front. And then I'm going to close this jump ring. Okay. Now you can see that here's my 2 jump rings that I had turned up. I folded up this ring, and I folded up this ring. Of course, this one's still movable a little bit, so that's why you saw me tuck it back into place. And then this jump ring here is the one that we just added. And you can see that it's on this front rubber O-ring from the bottom and on the back rubber O-ring from the bottom. So when we're folding up in our next step, so see how our ring is on the horizontal again. We want to fold that up. That's why we're just ignoring these ones that are on the bottom row, because what we're trying to do by folding up the top row is make these meet up on the inside here. So for this next jump ring I'm going to be connecting this O-ring here and this O-ring here, and they're going to sit inside of this O-ring. Okay, so I'm going to grab another jump ring. When I pick this up, I'm going to push down on it to make sure it stays flat, and then tuck my fingers up behind it so that I don't lose everything that I put into place, okay? And then I just want you to see right here, okay, that it's this ring here and the one that you can barely see back behind it that we're gonna be grabbing. Okay, so I'm letting it pass down through both of those, and then see how I'm flipping that around the outside. We're staying inside that ring. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do the whole way down the rest of the length of this chain. So let me flip that back up so you can see clearly how all of our rings, this happens from folding this bottom row, and this top row of jump rings, these are the ones that we're adding in. Okay, so on the next one we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold this over so that this jump ring is now on the vertical, and then we're going to need a jump ring in here. So let me pick this up. We'll take a close look at this, okay? And you see right here and this ring that's back behind it, those are the ones that we want to gather up together. Okay, so I went through both of them. I can see I'm on the back side now. I'm going to let this ring come out around that jump ring and close. Okay, so this is what we're going to do the whole way down the bracelet, just as far as you can. I want you to notice before I go and finish up the length of this, and you go ahead and finish up the length of this, that this is a weave that's on the bias, okay? So you can see it going diagonally here. And what I want you to notice about this is that this top first O-ring is a top one. So when eventually we get to the end, and don't worry about this as you're adding this next step, we will be wanting to end on a bottom, okay? So that's all gonna match up in the end. So let's just keep going on our own. You keep folding and adding these jump rings in, just the way that I'm doing right here. And you can pause the video if you'd like to, and catch up with me, and we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I hope, like me, you've finished the length of your bracelet, and I stopped by talking about the fact that this is going to end on the top, and you know what, this ends on the top too. So that pauses a little problem for us, but it's okay, because what we're going to do now is, once we end that, we're going to add one more in. Now this time we don't have to worry about ignoring anything on the bottom. We're actually adding the one on the bottom, and then we're going to connect it to the one that's sitting back here too. So let me show you that a little bit better. Okay, see how there's one back behind it back here. I'm going to lay this one in front, and I'm just going to pass around this one in front and hook the one that's sitting behind it, and here we go. So now we're starting and ending our chain right where we want to, okay? Okay, so that's where we end. This is where we begin, okay? So all that we need to do at this point, this one is actually a fairly simple one to finish if you've fully grasped what we're doing at this point. So let me just hold this in place so you can see that this is going to need to get connected by this ring and this ring that's sitting behind it. So we're going to do that one first, and then we're going to have to create one on the bottom. Okay, so let me pick up my ring, okay, and see how I'm just laying this on top. So this one that was on the very end is getting linked to this second one in the beginning. So say it's linking to this one here. Okay, so we're going to pass through and pass through the one from the end, okay, and link that. Okay, see how that just continues in the pattern? So our top part's fine, and now we need to address these two bottom ones here. So this one here is going to connect to this one that's sitting back behind it. And if you want, you can, you know, turn this upside down so that you can reach it more easily. It is going kind of the opposite direction of what you're used to, but that's okay. Okay, and there we go. Okay, and now you don't know where we started or where we ended because that's continuous. The bracelet will stretch to fit the wrist, so it'll fit over your hand, sit on the wrist, doesn't need a clasp. And this is just a beautiful weave, how it weaves back and forth and uses a little bit larger rings. I particularly like this one because of the square wire jump rings. With the hard edges on these, they're always going to get a little bit of extra sparkle that you don't get from a round wire ring. So hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you're going to try some more in the future. Thanks so much.